Hello y'all on YouTube, this is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I wanted to do a quick cleaning and tuning of a video, something I was going to do, and I just started taking the knife apart and I realized you guys might be very interested in seeing all the details of this. So this is the WE Knives Exciton, and it is a button lock, and I had already taken off the pivot screw here, this part right here. That was with my T8. I took off the two screws, this one here and this one here, off here, and then these two screws were off over here. All right, and there's another screw over here, but that's going to come off from the inside. So those were all T8s. So if you guys are curious, that's the T8 screw for those screws, right? And then there's one T6 inside. All right, so to this point, this is where all those screws come from. So now I'm going to go ahead and take off the integral back spacer. This comes off of here, and you'll see there's a T6 right here. There was another T6 over here. That's what this screw is right here. Okay, and then I'm going to release this part. Comes up here. This is where we will see the spring for the plunge lock, and then of course here's the blade stop. That's the blade stop pin right there. And in order to release this, I have to push the button in to come up, and you can see where it locks in there. And then in order to get past that, I have to come all the way up to this part right here where there's a little cutout on it. And then this will allows me to take the plunge lock out, and then we get the screws, the washers out. And there's the other washer. As you can see, this knife is pretty dirty, and that's what I wanted to clean it, because it sounded like it was a little gritty. And I was afraid that it was really dirty on the inside. But while I was at it, I figured, hey, you know, let's take a look at the washers and see if we could maybe replace them too. And I did get some new washers in, and I think these might actually fit really well. So let's take a look here. I'm looking at the, well, that's 3/16. I don't know if this is 3/16. We'll try it first. Let me open this. So these are the 3/16. I doubt these are the right size, but we'll give it a shot on the pivot. Bet this is probably a 5mm. Yeah, that's too small. All right, so not 3/16. Let's put those back and get the 5mm. Here we are. All right. Oh no, those are the 3/64. That's probably for the quiet carry. All right, so I'm gonna put some of these off to the side. Yep. Okay, that's probably for the QSP. All right, here we are. So 5mm, 0.23 inner diameter, 0.37 outer diameter, thickness is 0.05 inches, and then it's an 11 ball count. I believe this is the right one. Excuse me. Let's see if it fits the pivot. Okay, it does. And let's see how it matches up to the other one. Yep. It matches. All right, good. So these are the washers that I want. They're basically the Rocket Glide rings, and they're the 5mm, 0.20, 1/16, 0.37, and the details if you're interested. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and clean this guy up, because it is little, as you can see, pretty filthy on the inside. So we're gonna just kind of clean the inside, get all that nice and cleaned up. And as you can see on here, this is number, if you can see that, this is 33 of 205, and it's CPM 20 CV. And this is a hollow grind. Just trying to get all that grit and dirt out. All right, so let's go ahead and drop this pivot. Now it's a captive pivot. I'm gonna take this out as well. We'll drop that washer out. Yeah, sometimes in manufacturing, you know, it's pretty dirty. It's some nice milling for weight relief in here, and you can see because of the integral carbon fiber back spacer, which is pretty cool. It's a nice one single piece. It's a lot of weight relief. It makes this very, very light. I was wondering how they achieved that, and they did a great job on that. All right, let's take this out as well. yeah, where the spring is, it's really dirty in there. I don't know if you can see that. It's got a lot of like black grease in there, and I don't know if that they used a heavy gauge grease or something. I'm going to probably use my nano oil 85 weight, which is the heavy gauge, which I would normally use for like detent balls and stuff like that. I tend to use that on my shark locks, the springs and stuff, and I use it here on my button locks. That works really well for me. All right, so that's pretty clean. So let's clean these little washers. I'm going to move that over there. Now these are the old washers that I'm not going to use, so I'm going to put these over here with the bag over here. Let me wash these guys. Just want to get all that grease stuff off, because it was filthy. You could see that. All right, so let's clean the pivot here. All right, that's nice and clean. All right, so now we can begin to reassemble. Excuse me. So since I'm going to use the skiff washers, I will probably, and you can see this, there's already a little track right there, already on these washers. I don't know if you can see that. Right, I'm going to use the back side of this, so I'm going to put those in like that. On this one as well, you'll see there's like a little, can you see that? There's a little track on there. I don't know if you can get a good angle of that. So I'm going to reverse that and put that on the inside like that. Now, I do need to clean the outside here real quick. All right, so I don't know if you can see that right there. What we're dealing with is the pivot here. There is a little cutout. I don't know if you can see that. That's what's going to make this a captive pivot. I really like that WE does that. So we just have to get that little part fitting in here. The nice thing is it's pretty even with the logo, so that's nice. Yeah, and of course I pushed out the washer, which is fine. All right, so I'll put that like that. All right, so then I'm going to use some of my oil. This is my nano oil. You can't see the bottle because I've used it so much. When I run out of this, I have some KPL that I like. KPL, nano oil, they're all good stuff, right? So what I like to do is just put a couple of drops. I don't do too much, but I'm of the opinion more is better than less, just for the sheer fact that you want to be able to have you know, I don't want rust in there, or I don't want other things like that. So I tend to put probably 3 quick drops like that on there. So then we're going to get the blade over here, and we'll do a little drop here, maybe there. All right. Okay. So let's get the plunge lock. I want to clean that too, because I suspect that's a little dirty. So my hands are a little dirty tonight because I sharpened all our kitchen knives. My wife has gotten spoiled with having sharp blades, so she's like, hey, these knives aren't cutting the tomatoes as easily. Like, she was squishing the tomato, and she didn't like the fact that it just slid right through. So, you know, it's kind of funny that my wife got a little spoiled with how she liked to cut the tomatoes. So, and that's fine. You know, I mean, she likes a sharp knife, and I appreciate that she likes a sharp knife, so that's good with me. So I have no problem with that. So real quick, I'm going to use the 85 nano oil weight. I'm going to put that into where the button lock goes with the spring. And this is a pretty tense spring, so let's clean that off too, because that was kind of dirty as well. Yeah, we're going to clean that off. But as you can see, it seems like a traditional button lock. I don't see anything that's different than the other one. Now, I will say this is the plunge lock when it's in the open position. Yeah, let's reassemble first. and we'll take a look. But it seems like a traditional button lock. I mean, I don't see anything that's different. All right. So we have the blade stop. That's for the open and the close position. All right. So we've got some oil on there already. Now to get this over, I have to make sure that this little groove here lines up here. And in order to get that through, I have to make sure that we go all the way through first here. So let's get on here on top of the pivot. Okay. And then this has to go all the way around here to make sure it stops right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is hold this in place. I want to make sure I don't want to lose all these things, but I want to make sure my screw here is captive. Come on. There we go. All right. So I want to make sure it's locked in place for the captive pivot, okay? So now we're in place here for here. All right. So now let's go ahead and do our heavy gauge oil. Where the spring's going to be in here and here, and where the plunge lock is going to go. So I'm going to do a little drop in here with the 85 weight. I don't like to let it shoot out, so I go kind of slow. All right. So I'm going to make sure it's on the side a little bit. Since it's steel, I'm going to use that to pick it up because there's oil in the end there. All right, so now we have to assemble. We've got all our pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here like that. Oh, and then we have to put our other cage ceramic ball bearing washer on here. So let's do that. And just a couple of drops. Okay. Let's see if that holds. Nope. Yep, I'm going to have to put that on top like this. Okay. Okay, here we go. So we got to make sure we get that little spring inside the hole. Okay. Make sure that's on there. That's on there. Okay, that's in place. So I've noticed if everything's lined up, the backspacer should go on fairly easy. Yeah, there we go. Okay, which is really nice because it kind of, oh, before I do that, yeah, got to put our little screw back on. So that's going to be the quarter pivot screw, this little guy right here. I'm not going to worry too much about Loctite because it's going to be kind of kept in place by that integral backspacer. But I like these blue anodized screws a lot, so I want to try to, you know, take care of them. So I'm reverse threading them. Okay. Make sure this is on there tight. Okay, that's good. Are we on? Oh, no, there we go. Okay, that's on. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the fire anodized titanium washer in there, and here's our pivot. So when I'm putting all this stuff together, I'm going to put a little Loctite on here. Oops, I always like to tap it first because it kind of, yeah, sometimes makes a mess. All right, so let's get back to our T8. Just a little dab. Oh, way too much. That came out shooting out really fast. Yeah, way too much. Yeah, I think there's enough in there still. Okay, so I'm going to hold the back of this pivot on here. There we go. Reverse thread first. Okay. All right, so far so good. All right, so let's put the rest of it together and then we'll check the screws. All right, so these two are going to go on this side. Excuse me, and then these two are going to go on this side. So let's go ahead and put these on. Yeah, that's plenty. I like this blue anodization of these screws. It's really a bright blue. I'm not used to seeing anodized so brightly. Oh, this already has a little Loctite on there, so it probably doesn't need a whole lot. I can just touch that right there, yeah. And as you can see, this is a inserted, or I'm going brain dead here. I'm sure somebody's going to comment down below and help me remember this, but this is that's cut out into the actual carbon fiber, integral carbon fiber backspacer. So it's like it's a slotted, I don't know what, boy, can't remember the term. It's like I suddenly just went brain dead for a second. I'm sure it'll come to me as we're doing this, but it's basically secure, right? It's not free floating. It's got a little cutout and it fits into that. So one screw is going to be okay. So let's make sure that's nice and secure. All right, good. And let's do our last screw here, and then we'll adjust the pivot because I think it might be just a little bit too tight. No blade rock. All right, so I like to make sure that there's oil in here. And what I'll probably do is put just a little touch right here where it's actually going to be going against the side here. So I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to just put an ever so slight small touch. Smallest drop if I can get it out. Come on. I'm being patient. If I squeeze it really hard, it's going to just explode out. And see, it's almost a little bit more than I wanted, but that's all right. So I want the plunge to kind of go in and out to work that, okay? And then I'm going to go over here, just ever so slight, just a little touch. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's much better. All right, so it was a little gritty before, and I have a feeling that's probably all that dirt you saw that we wiped up. You can still see some here on the table, and definitely get on the cloth. But those washers were, you know, they're great. I will tell you, WE knives, their washers that they've been releasing have been really phenomenal. And I wasn't sure if this was the same case or not, but they were just really dirty. And looking at these washers, they don't look terrible, actually. They look really well. Even I'm sure that's phosphor bronze, but that is really well done. A lot of times it doesn't look as smooth and as level as that, and it's got some great glide to it. I think this might have been just really, really dirty. And I probably could have gotten away with not having to use these, but these washers were really well. So what do we have? We have 2, 4, 6, 8. So these are 9. Now, I will say that the benefit is I have 11 cage ball bearings on this one. So that's going to give you, I think, a little more stability. There we go. So gravity will work once you release it with the button. Now it's got a little stick to it because I did clean everything off on this. Let me go ahead and close this so we don't dry out. But it's got a little bit of stick because I did clean everything out, and it had some oil in it before, and I have a feeling we got to work all that through again. But all the stick and all that stuff was gone. Now I will say this plunge lock, man, it's got some great. The only thing, you know, everyone's used to is called detent, right? It's the resistance the resistance to the opening of the blade. And it's not detent on a plunge lock. What it is if you can see this button is inserted here, and when it opens up, you can see this pops out. All right, I don't know if you can all see that. So this is when it's closed. Let's see if we can get the light on it. And that's when it pops out. And that right there is what's pushing against the blade. Now typically the plunge on the cutout on the blade is at an angle, and depends how steep that blade is. And then the plunge comes in, and it's a little bit of an angle too. It may be straight, it may be angled. I think this one is perfectly straight. It looks perfectly straight on this one. But so it's going to be hitting into that plunge at an angle. Now if it's too far and and it doesn't have a good contact point, it could slide up and down. And that's why some of those button locks, when people are tapping them, they do release. And that also has to do with the tension of the spring. And now if you saw that spring in there, that was a pretty robust string, I will say. It looked like a really, really good spring compared to a lot of other button locks. It really felt like it was solid. It was thicker. It looked like it was a better quality of spring. And I can definitely feel the resistance of that spring as I push the button. So, and that's what's going to really keep it engaged and locked in there. See, there's no blade rock whatsoever because that spring has fully got the plunge engaged on the tang of the blade. So that's acting just like a frame lock or a liner lock that engages on the tang of the blade. So this is in there nice and solid. And when you release it, now it slides into that little groove that's over there. You saw we had to move it in and out of that groove to get past there. Well, it slides up and it holds it, but it's at an angle so that it's just a ramp. It just overcomes that ramp, and that gives you the feeling of a detent ball that's in that little hole, detent hole, and there's sometimes a detent groove that it goes through. It just has to overcome that. So what we're dealing with, it's not a detent, but it's a plunge. How could we? What's the right term? I would say plunge resistance, or I mean, technically, there's a hole there. The plunge lock is sort of engaging it, but it's at a very leveled angle. It's kind of it's overcoming that angle. It's not when it's engaged over here, it's fully engaged into the tang. It's not going to move unless we move that off the tang of the blade, and that's what unlocks it. But that's also what locks it when it's there with a spring pushing up on it. Likewise over here, it's being held in place, but you can break that part because of that angle on the blade itself and where the plunge is holding it in place. It's a much less resistance, but it's not a hard lock, right? So it's resisting at an angle, and the spring is what's pushing against that angle there, causing the resistance. So sort of like a detent ball and a lock bar pushes against the blade, and it gives a resistance with and we call it a detent, a strong detent. Technically, it's a detent ball going into a detent hole, and it has to break out of that detent hole for that detent ball to be free for the blade to open. And, well, for a plunge lock, it's in the plunge captive part. It's not the lock part, but it's in the captive part. So it has to break the plunge resistance. I don't know what we want to call that. The plunge, yeah. I don't know. Some of you guys, if you know what that little part of the plunge lock where it engages the blade in the lock position is called, because I really don't know. I do know when it engages the tang of the blade, that's different, right? So, anyways, but it's done well with the spring and everything together, so you actually have some really nice resistance on this, and you can get a really strong, commanding flip on this. Now with the And let's make sure, yeah, we're nice and centered, so we're good. But with the wonderful skiff washers, it's definitely a lot smoother. It feels a lot smoother, definitely. So that's nice, and it feels more solid because you have 11 balls as compared to 9. So the number of ceramic balls is definitely going to distribute the weight out, and it's going to make this a little more secure for the blade when it's making that contact between the blade and the ceramic ball bearings to the frame, the titanium handles where the steel washers are, right? So, and the reason why steel washers are there, in case you're curious, because titanium is going to be a little softer than the steel, and so the ceramic balls pushing against the steel, it's not going to indent the titanium frame as much. So it's a better contact point, right? So there you go. That's what we did. We cleaned it up. It was pretty dirty. We put in the skiff washers right here, which are the 5 millimeter pivot with the 0.2 inches inner diameter and the 0.37 inches outer diameter with the 11 ball count and the 0.05 inches for the thickness of the ceramic balls. Definitely worth trying out. This works really, really great. And this was relatively easy. A lot of times when you do a plunge lock, the spring wants to fly all over the place, but this integral backspacer made the assembly kind of easy. I don't know. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So that was fun. And it's just a little bit smoother, I think. And I'm sure it's going to continue to even get better and better because that's what skiff does. I think in this case, with all the cleaning, it might not have been noticeable, but hey, I put them in there. I like the extra ball counts, and I like how it works, so I'm going to leave them in there. I think it'll be fun. So there you go. That's the tuning, if you will, the change out of the ball counts. It's a little longer video. Feel free to fast forward any of this. I'm sure you already have. Again, I was sharpening all of my kitchen knives. That's why they're a little dirty. This is all steel stuff that I need to wash off. But I did want to do this quick video that I had kind of started, and I hope this was informative, helpful to you guys. If you have any questions about some of these when I do the cleaning and I switch out the washers, please feel free to comment down below. You have any questions about any unboxings, any reviews, or any of my other videos, any Rob ramblings, you have ideas for that, please comment down below. You have any questions for me about this knife, please comment down below. I do try to answer all of those, and I appreciate all the comments. And hey, if you like this video, would you consider hitting the like button? And if you've already liked the video, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. Both subscribing and liking really helps out the channel. It helps us to be able to put on more content, do more things, get more knives, allows vendors and knife retailers and manufacturers to allow us to have access to more stuff. I really appreciate that, because more stuff for the channel means more stuff for you guys, because I always like to pass that along. If you've already subscribed to, maybe consider hitting the notification button so you can be notified of future content. And if you've done all that, maybe check me out over on, let's move this down a little bit, check me out on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. That's again on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Hey, thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.